I'm sitting in the waiting room at the cardiologist's office last Tuesday, and there's a young man across from me, maybe 30, 32. Nice suit, expensive watch. He's on his phone the whole time, typing furiously, barely looking up. His leg is bouncing, his jaw is clenched. And I recognize him, not the man, the pattern, because 50 years ago, that was me. I'm Walter, and I'm 82 years old. I've buried my wife, watched friends disappear one by one, and spent more nights than I'd like to admit staring at the ceiling, wondering where it all went. And that young man in the waiting room, he's making the same 7 mistakes I made, the same 7 things I wasted 50 years on, and nobody warned me, so I'm going to warn you. The first thing I wasted 50 years on was confusing being busy with being alive. My daughter called me on a Tuesday afternoon in March of 1987 to tell me she was in labor with my first grandchild. I was in the middle of a budget meeting, and I told her I would be there as soon as I could, that I just needed to finish up a few things. By the time I got to the hospital 4 hours later, my grandson had already been born. I missed it. I missed the first breath of my first grandchild because I was sitting in a conference room arguing about quarterly projections that nobody remembers today. And here is the thing that kills me. I remember feeling important that day. I remember thinking that I was indispensable, that the meeting could not happen without me, that I was building something that mattered. I believed that being needed meant I mattered. That busyness was proof of my value. Every meeting I attended, every late night at the office, every weekend I sacrificed to work, I told myself it was all adding up to something significant. But I was not building anything. I was hiding from the harder questions about what I actually wanted from my life, hiding from intimacy with my wife and children, hiding from the terrifying freedom of actually choosing how to spend my limited time on this earth. Busyness was my drug, and I was completely addicted to it. What I should have done was learn to sit in stillness, learn to be present without needing to be productive, learn to understand that my worth as a human being was never measured in calendar entries or how many people needed me in a room. My grandson is 37 years old now, and I have never stopped regretting that I was not there when he came into this world. That is what busyness cost me. One irreplaceable moment, traded for something I cannot even remember. But here is what made it worse. The second thing I wasted 50 years on was saving all my living for later. My wife Eleanor and I had this dream. We were going to go to Italy. We talked about it on our honeymoon in 1962. Lying in a cheap motel room in Virginia because that was all we could afford. Someday we would walk through Rome. Someday we would see the Sistine Chapel. Someday we would drink wine in Tuscany and watch the sunset over Florence. We said someday for 40 years. First we could not go because we were saving for a house. Then we could not go because the kids were young. Then we could not go because the kids were in college and we were paying tuition. Then we could not go because I was up for partner and could not take that much time off. Then we could not go because her mother was sick. Then we could not go because I was too close to retirement to risk using my vacation days. Always a reason, always later, always someday. I retired at 68 years old with a healthy pension and a folder full of Italian travel brochures I had been collecting for decades. 3 years later, Eleanor started forgetting things. Little things at first, where she put her keys, what day it was, then bigger things, our anniversary, our children's names, my name. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 71. We never went to Italy. She spent her last years in a memory care facility not knowing who I was, and I spent those years sitting beside her holding a hand that did not recognize my touch, thinking about all those some days that turned into never. Later is a thief. It robs you of your present by promising you a future that may never come. And by the time you realize the theft has occurred, it is too late to get back what was stolen. What I should have done was treat someday as the fantasy it always was. I should have taken her to Italy in 1975 when the kids were young, even if it meant going into a little debt. I should have understood that the present moment is the only time any of us actually have. If there is something you are saving for retirement, do a small version of it now. Do not wait for perfect conditions because perfect conditions do not exist. Take the trip, learn the language, start the hobby, do it now while now still belongs to you. But I did not just waste time waiting for later. The third thing I wasted 50 years on was letting fear make my decisions. In 1974, my college roommate called me with a proposition. He was starting a small computer company and wanted me to come on board as a partner. This was before personal computers were a thing, before anyone really understood what was coming. He needed someone who understood numbers, someone he trusted, and he was offering me an equal stake in the business. I was 32 years old with a stable job at an insurance company, a mortgage, a wife, and 2 kids under 5. I told him I could not do it. I told him I had responsibilities. I told him I could not afford to take that kind of risk with my family's security. What I did not tell him, what I barely admitted to myself, was that I was terrified. Terrified of failing. Terrified of what people would say if I left a respectable job to chase some wild idea about machines. Terrified of looking foolish, so I stayed in my safe job and watched from the sidelines as the computer revolution happened without me. My roommate did not become a billionaire or anything like that, but he built something. He spent 30 years doing work that excited him, solving problems that mattered to him, creating something from nothing. And I spent 30 years processing insurance claims and calling it responsibility. I called my fear practicality. I called it being realistic. I called it doing what a good father and husband should do. But every time I played it safe, something in me died a little, not dramatically, quietly. The death of possibility, the death of the person I might have become if I had been brave enough to try. What I should have done was understand that the biggest risk in life is never taking one. That the regret for things you did not do cuts so much deeper than regret for things you tried and failed at. I have failed at plenty of things in my 82 years. I have made bad investments and said wrong things and embarrassed myself more times than I can count. But I do not lie awake at night thinking about those failures. I lie awake thinking about the roads I was too scared to walk down, the doors I never opened, the life I never let myself live because I was too afraid of what might go wrong. But fear was not the only thing that held me back. The fourth thing I wasted 50 years on was trying to control things that were never mine to control. My son David wanted to be a musician. He was good too, really good. He could play guitar in a way that made you stop what you were doing and listen. When he graduated high school in 1985, he told me he wanted to move to Nashville and give it a real shot. I spent 6 months trying to talk him out of it. I told him about the statistics, about how few musicians actually make it, about how he needed a backup plan, about how he was throwing away his future. I made him feel small for having a dream. I told myself I was protecting him, being a good father, saving him from disappointment. What I was really doing was trying to control an outcome that was never mine to control. He did not go to Nashville. He got an accounting degree like I wanted. He has spent the last 35 years in a job he tolerates, and there is a guitar in his closet that he never plays anymore. And every time I see that guitar, I wonder who he might have become if I had just let him try. I thought if I planned carefully enough and worried thoroughly enough and worked hard enough, I could control how things turned out. I spent decades gripping life like it was a steering wheel, convinced that if I just held on tight enough, I could steer everyone I loved away from pain and failure. But life is not a car. It is more like weather. You can prepare for it, you can respond to it, but you cannot control it. And all that gripping did not give me control. It just exhausted me and pushed away the people I was trying to hold on to. My daughter stopped telling me about her life because she knew I would try to manage it. My wife learned to make decisions without consulting me because she was tired of my need to orchestrate everything. I was so busy trying to control outcomes that I missed the chance to simply be present for the people I loved. What I should have done was learn the difference between influence and control. I can share my perspective, I can offer support, but I cannot and should not try to dictate how other people live their lives. I should have let the people I love make their own mistakes, because that is how human beings learn and grow. I should have focused on my own responses to life instead of trying to manipulate results that were never in my hands to begin with. But my need for control showed up in another way too. The fifth thing I wasted 50 years on was keeping score in relationships. My brother Robert and I grew up sharing a bedroom in a small house in Ohio. We were 18 months apart and we did everything together. built forts in the backyard, played baseball until it was too dark to see, told each other secrets we never told anyone else. He was my best friend for the first 25 years of my life. Then our mother died in 1989 and left behind a house and some money, and suddenly we were not brothers anymore. We were accountants. Robert thought he deserved more because he had lived closer to her and helped more in her final years. I thought things should be split evenly because that is what fair meant. We both lawyered up over an estate worth maybe $100,000. We said things to each other that you cannot unsay, words designed to wound, words that found their targets. The last time I spoke to my brother was on the phone in 1991 when he told me I was dead to him. I told myself I was just being fair, that relationships should be balanced, that I had done just as much for our mother over the years, just in different ways, and I should not let myself be taken advantage of. I kept mental spreadsheets of every sacrifice I had made, every favor I had done, every time I had given more than I received. I did this with Robert. I did this with my wife. I did this with friends. I was always calculating, always measuring, always making sure the ledger balanced. But love does not have a balance sheet. Every time I kept score, I killed a little bit of the connection. I turned relationships into transactions and then wondered why they felt so hollow. Robert died of a heart attack in 1999. 8 years of silence, and then a phone call from his wife telling me he was gone. I did not get to say goodbye. I did not get to tell him I was sorry. I did not get to tell him that no inheritance was worth losing my brother over. I stood at his funeral as a stranger, surrounded by 8 years of his life I knew nothing about, and I understood for the first time what scorekeeping really costs. What I should have done was give without counting, forgive without keeping records, understand that being right and being loving are very often opposites, and that winning an argument can mean losing something far more valuable. I would give every penny of that inheritance to have one more conversation with my brother, but I cannot. That door is closed forever, and the scorekeeping did not just destroy that relationship. The sixth thing I wasted 50 years on was believing my story about who I was. For most of my adult life, I could tell you exactly who Walter was. I was a senior actuary at a respected insurance firm. I was a homeowner in a good neighborhood. I was a provider who never missed a mortgage payment. I was a father of 3. I was a man who had done things the right way, followed the rules, built a respectable life. These were not just descriptions, they were me. I had constructed my entire identity around these roles and labels and achievements, built myself a story, and then lived inside it like it was a house. Then I retired at 68, and the story started falling apart. That first Monday morning when I did not have anywhere to be, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and felt something I had never felt before. Terror, not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind. I did not know who I was without my job title. I did not know what to do with myself without meetings and deadlines and people who needed my expertise. I had been a senior actuary for so long that I had forgotten how to just be Walter. Then Eleanor got sick and the story shattered completely. I was supposed to be the provider, the protector, the one who fixed things. But I could not fix this. I could not protect her from her own mind turning against her. Every role I had built my identity around was stripped away, and underneath all of it I found a stranger. I had spent so long being someone that I never figured out who I actually was beneath all the labels. What I should have done was hold my identities loosely. Understand that they were chapters in a book, not the whole story. Invest time in knowing myself beneath the roles, so that when the roles inevitably changed or disappeared, I would still have solid ground to stand on. You are not your job. You are not your relationships. You are not your achievements or your possessions or your status. Those things change. They always change. Careers end. Children grow up and leave. Health fails. The titles and roles you cling to will all be taken from you eventually, either gradually or all at once. Who you are beneath all of that is what you need to discover, and you need to discover it before life strips everything else away, and you find yourself standing in the rubble, wondering who is left. But of all the things I wasted my life on, there is one that haunts me more than any other. The seventh thing I wasted 50 years on is the one that wakes me up at 3 in the morning and will not let me fall back asleep. I did not say the things that mattered. My father was a quiet man who worked at a steel mill for 41 years. He never complained. He never called in sick. He put food on the table and kept a roof over our heads and asked for nothing in return. I respected him more than anyone I've ever known, but I never told him that. I assumed he knew. The last time I saw my father, he was in a hospital bed, smaller than I remembered, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed. I sat with him for 3 hours. We talked about the weather. We talked about the Cleveland Indians. We talked about nothing. And when I left, I said what I always said. I said, "See you later, Dad." He died that night. I never told him I was proud of him. I never told him that everything good in me came from watching him. I never thanked him for the sacrifices he made. I had 47 years to say those words, and I never said them, not once, because I assumed there would be time, and because I told myself that I was not good at that emotional stuff, and because I believed that actions speak louder than words. Then Eleanor got sick, and I watched the woman I had loved for 53 years slowly disappear into a fog I could not follow her into. There was a window of time, maybe a year or two, when she was still mostly herself, when she still knew who I was and could understand what I was saying. I should have spent every moment of that window telling her what she meant to me. I should have thanked her for the life she gave me, for the children she raised while I was at the office, for the patience she showed during all the years I was too busy and too distracted and too focused on things that did not matter. I should have told her that marrying her was the best decision I ever made and that I was sorry for all the ways I failed her. But I did not. I held back. I told myself there would be more time. And then one day she looked at me and asked who I was, and the window closed forever. My children grew up in a house where love was demonstrated but rarely spoken. I coached their teams and paid for their educations and showed up when it mattered. But I cannot remember the last time I looked my son in the eye and said, "David, I love you, and I am proud of the man you have become." I cannot remember because it did not happen. What I should have done was say it, all of it. The gratitude and the love and the apologies and the pride. Every single day, I should have understood that silence is not strength. Silence is cowardice dressed up as stoicism. The people you love cannot read your mind. They cannot feel what you feel unless you open your mouth and tell them. And someday, sooner than you think, you will not have the chance anymore. If there is someone you love who does not know it, not because you have never shown it, but because you have never said it, what are you waiting for? What could possibly be more important than making sure the people who matter most to you know exactly how you feel about them before it is too late? I am asking you this because I waited. I am asking you this because I know what that silence costs. I am asking you this because I do not want you to be 82 years old, sitting alone in a quiet house, wishing you could go back and say the words you were too proud or too scared or too busy to say. I am telling you all of this not to depress you. I am telling you because I finally learned, 20 years too late, what actually matters. After Eleanor's diagnosis, something broke open in me. Maybe it was the shock of realizing that the future I had been saving everything for was never going to arrive. Maybe it was watching the person I loved most in the world slip away and understanding for the first time how little time any of us really have. Whatever it was, I changed. I started saying the words. I told my children I loved them, and I was proud of them, and I was sorry for the ways I had failed them as a father. I stopped trying to control outcomes and started just being present for whatever was happening. I let go of the mental scorecards I had been keeping my entire life and forgave people I had been holding grudges against for decades, not for them, but for me. I started asking myself who I was beneath all the roles and titles and labels, and for the first time in my life, I began to discover the answer. I stopped saving my living for later and started doing small versions of the things I had always put off. I learned to sit in stillness without reaching for something to make me feel productive. Here is the strange thing. These last 14 years since Eleanor's diagnosis, watching her fade, facing my own decline, burying friends, living with loss and grief and the daily reality of growing old, these have been the most alive years of my entire life. Because I finally stopped wasting time on things that do not matter. I finally started living like my time was limited, which it always was and always will be. If I could reach through this screen and shake you, I would. Instead, I am going to give you 7 things you can do today, not next week, not when you have more time. Today. First, put down your phone and actually look at the person across from you. See them, be with them. Second, say the thing you have been meaning to say. The I love you or the I am sorry or the I am proud of you that has been sitting in your chest waiting for the right moment. The right moment is now. Third, take one small step toward that thing you have been postponing. Book the flight, sign up for the class, make the phone call. Fourth, forgive someone, not for their sake, but for yours. Let go of a grudge that is poisoning you while the other person goes on with their life, not even thinking about it. Fifth, sit in stillness for 10 minutes today. No phone, no television, no distractions, just you and your thoughts and the uncomfortable silence that might teach you something about who you are. Sixth, ask yourself who you are beneath your roles. If you were not your job title and your relationship status and your list of achievements, who would be left? Start getting to know that person. Seventh, live like your time is limited, because it is. That young man in the waiting room at the cardiologist's office. After my appointment, I found him still sitting there, still staring at his phone, still clenching his jaw, still missing his own life 1 minute at a time. I almost walked past him. Almost. But I stopped, and I said, "Son, whatever is on that screen can wait. Your life cannot." He looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I am. Maybe that is what 82 years on this planet does to you. But I said what I needed to say, and that is all any of us can do. You do not get these 50 years back. I am proof of that. Every mistake I have told you about, every year I wasted being busy instead of being alive, every word I did not say, every trip I did not take, every moment I missed because I was chasing something that did not matter, those are gone. I cannot get them back. But you still have time. Not unlimited time. Nobody has that. But enough. Enough to make different choices. Enough to stop wasting your life on things that will not matter when you are lying in a hospital bed at the end. Enough to tell the people you love that you love them. Enough to take the trip and make the change and say the words and live the life you have been saving for someday. The question is not whether you have time. The question is what you are going to do with it. I am 82 years old. I have made every mistake I just told you about, and probably 100 more I did not have time to mention. And I am still here, still learning, still trying to get it right with whatever time I have left. If this video helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is making the same mistakes I made. Someone who is wasting their time on things that do not matter. Subscribe, because I have more to say, and honestly, not much time left to say it. And leave a comment. Tell me which of these 7 mistakes you are going to stop making. Tell me what you are going to do differently starting today. The clock is ticking for you, for me, for everyone you love. It has been ticking since the day you were born, and it will not stop until the day you die. What are you going to do with your time?